council leaders can take on the responsibilities. Martin Underhill, a former commissioner in Dorset, says the job had limitations.
I had no say over the finances or the recruitment of police officers, which I found hugely frustrating. But the mayoral model will have more say, and it will also lead to a more joined-up model of policing with social services, with mental health.
A police motorcyclist has been found not guilty of causing death by careless driving after hitting a pensioner while escorting the Duchess of Edinburgh. Christopher Harrison struck 81-year-old Helen Holland while travelling through West London in 2023. A post-mortem examination found her death was caused by complications from a severe head injury. The Prime Minister's vowed to deal with whoever briefed the press, saying the Health Secretary was planning a coup. Sir Keir Starmer says he's been assured the briefings didn't come from Downing Street and has had to apologise to Wes Streeting. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says the government's distracted.
Every single paper yesterday covered this story. So someone was talking, and journalists would not have run it if it hadn't come from Number 10. So this is a cover-up. They're trying to sweep this under the rug because they have allowed people to see just how much chaos and disunity there is in government.
And an amber weather warning for heavy downpours and flooding has been issued for parts of the UK tomorrow. Storm Claudia is also expected to bring some strong winds. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 104 points at 98.08. The pound buys $1.32 and €1.13. LBC weather. Rain in southern and central areas tonight. Clear elsewhere, but becoming colder. A low in Scotland of -2 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 3 minutes past 8 on LBC. Welcome to the programme if you've just joined us. We're streaming this hour on Global Player and the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel. Now, we have two very distinguished guests with us in this hour. Jonathan Dimbleby, almost a veteran of this programme now. You appear so often, Jonathan.
I feel that. I know my way how to get here now.
Now, he, of course, journalist and broadcaster, as you know, and he's the co-author of the newly updated book, The Palestinians, originally based on having travelled around the territory with photographer Don McCullin.
Rather famous photographer, who you know very well.
No, I don't. In the 1970s. And we have Peter Oborne with us, journalist and author, whose new book is called Complicit, Britain's Role in the Destruction of Gaza. Jonathan, let's start with your book. I mean, how did it come about?
It came about two reasons, really. One, that going to the Middle East as a reporter in the 70s, in Lebanon, in Israel, in Egypt, in the West Bank, and seeing the situation there, and reading before that, which is always in the back of my mind, that the then aspiring Prime Minister, Golda Meir, in 1969 said there is no such thing as a Palestinian people. They do not exist. And I not only thought that was odd, because it had no truth in it, but also it made me rather cross, as it were, because I thought this is a signal distortion. So I thought, I want to tell the story of how we got to 1979, and it was using the conversations I had, for which Don took the photographs, with people who had been through what they call the Nakba, the disaster, catastrophe of when they were expelled or fled from their lands in 1948, the 1967 war, and these growing number of refugees that was creating a really major problem, not only for them and for the Israelis, but in the region and very possibly beyond that. Problem that we're very familiar with, where it's even worse all these years on. And I wrote a new introduction for it, about 10,000 words, which seeks to bring it up to date from when the book was published until this summer.
That remark that Golda Meir made, I mean, do you think that is still the view of many Israelis, that there is no such thing as Palestine? We
hear it. We hear them saying it. There is no thing. I mean, the Likud party, which is led by Netanyahu, its founding slogan is "From the river to the sea." Now, we hear people shouting, I think sillily, I have to say, shouting "From the Jordan to the sea." It's the same river, the same sea, and you've got these competing groups at those ends of the spectrum saying it's our land. May I read you one thing? I don't like reading things out, but it's not my writing. In 1917, the Lord Balfour Foreign Secretary had said, and he was under great pressure, we view with favour the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. 2 years later, in 1919, he wrote a memo for the cabinet. It said this. It's quite extraordinary to me in terms of bad faith. In Palestine, we do not propose to go through even the form of consulting the wishes of the present inhabitants of the country. Zionism, be it right or wrong, good or bad, is rooted in age-old traditions, in present needs and future hopes of far profounder import than the desires and prejudices of the 700,000 Arabs who now inhabit that ancient land. To which, 2 years later, after Britain had the mandate, the responsibility for the territory, Lord Curzon, who had inherited the role of Foreign Secretary, said, what's to become of the people of that country? And this is from the record, as it were. They and their forefathers have occupied the country for the best part of 1,500 years. They own the soil. They will not be content either to be expropriated for Jewish immigrants or to act merely as hewers of wood and drawers of water for the latter, which, as I say, that they're the seeds, and he has written about this, the seeds of the tragedy of the Palestinian people, which I also believe is a tragedy for the Israeli people, was sown.
Peter Oborne, your book called Complicit, Britain's Role in the Destruction of Gaza. If you're watching, that's the cover, and I should have shown Jonathan's book as well. Very heavy tone, Jonathan.
It's very heavy, isn't it?
Yeah,
lots of photographs, that's why.
Peter, what was the genesis of your book? I mean, what motivated you to write this book?
Well, I have to say quite a lot of what Jonathan has just been saying. I mean, I decided to write it actually one evening. I was in Nablus, which is a fabulous town in the West Bank, and they have these glorious Ottoman buildings, and I was on the top of it, the Turquoise Hostel. I don't know if you go and stay there. It's very cheap and it's fabulously run in this ancient city built by the Romans. And I was looking up the sky, along which a day or two earlier Iranian missiles had been hurling towards Tel Aviv. And I suddenly realised I had to write this book because I'd spent, as you know, Ian, I was a lobbying journalist for a long time. So I'm a student of British politics.
Recovering.
A recovering lobby. But then in the last 10 years, 20 years, I've been writing an awful lot about the Middle East with Middle East Eye, the website I write for. And so I've gone on back and back for about 20 years to the West Bank and to Israel. So I understand the area. 15 years ago, Dorothy Byrne, the head of News of Current Affairs, sent me at Channel 4, gave me a hospital pass. She said, please present a Dispatches film on the pro-Israel lobby in Britain. So I sort of understood that territory. In fact, Jonathan makes an appearance because the pro-Israel lobby in Britain had a serious go at you. They complained about you. They're trying to get you off any questions or whatever it was.
There was an issue, an issue which arose incidentally out of something I had written about something that was extremely good by, I think, our most distinguished broadcasting individual covering the situation in the Middle East, Jeremy Bowen, who had been absolutely straight. And he'd got one fact allegedly wrong, and it led to massive complaints, which went up to the top of the BBC. I
thought this sort of thing doesn't happen nowadays.
No, does it?
No, it's all gone. It's all gone with this Donald Trump. You don't need a due process. The result of that was, I wrote a big thing saying, having looked through it, said, this is absurd to find him guilty, as indeed I think the Editorial Standards Committee had done. At which the same lobbying group, lawyers, said I wasn't fit to do the programme, did a long complaint up to the top of the BBC, at which point they withdrew the complaint. I don't know why, so I carried on doing any questions. Well, luckily it wasn't Donald Trump in charge.
But actually, also, I think 25 years ago, there was a higher calibre of a person on the board of the BBC. They weren't scared of their own shadow. They were prepared to resist pressure. And so that episode, they went after Olga Guerin in a shocking way. They went after Bowen, and they went as a third. Anyway, it was a real operation. But the BBC roughly stood up, whereas, as we've seen repeatedly over the last 2 years, they've consistently collapsed under Samir Shah and Tim Davey and co. it's been a bit of a shambles.
I don't want to. I would not go along with that entirely at all. I think that there have been some very good things. There was a brilliant film about the settlers in the West Bank not so long ago, done by...
Superb, by Louis Theroux. Marvellous film.
It's a brilliant film.
Yes, I watched
and
that,
I'd say too that the correspondents in the Middle East, and I touched on Jeremy, have very difficult situation to report. They are not allowed in, have not been allowed into Gaza firsthand, and they do their level best to stand up to exactly the standards of the BBC on impartiality. So I don't go the whole route. There have been other issues which Peter will want to deal with.
Let's get back to the point of the book, Peter.
Yeah. So, as I say, I understood the politics, I understood the pressures, I understood the Middle East, and I have written 2 books about political lying. And that was very important because the lies told have been massive over this. Almost any statement from the IDF is a fabrication, and the BBC insists on presenting it as if it was real. And I have a long list of lies from the Israelis, so I wanted to tell the truth. I realised very early on that Britain was part of Israel's slaughter of Palestinians, and it was the sale of arms. It was the diplomatic protection. And that was massive. So David Cameron's, when he became Foreign Secretary, tried to undermine the International Criminal Court as it set about putting in arrest warrants against Hamas leaders and also Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, the defense minister. He tried to interfere with that process. When the International Court of Justice, the most senior court in the world, launched its investigation into genocide claims by South Africa, Cameron attacked the court. He mocked the South African claim, and he didn't fully accept its verdict. And we go along. And there are various... And the worst thing that Cameron did during this phase, which is really awful, was when UNRWA, the humanitarian organisation which puts aid into Gaza, the Israelis have always hated it for various complex reasons. And in the wake of immediately after the International Criminal Justice ruling, Israel suddenly produced a sort of dossier, a dodgy dossier, which made out that UNRWA had Hamas fighters in it.
Well, it did.
No. And actually, I do urge you to have a look at I think it said they had 10 in an organisation with thousands of people. But rather than inspect it, you're welcome to your point of view, but the point about Cameron was that rather than interrogate that, but get the British Foreign Office, which has the capacity to investigate Israeli claims. But UNRWA admitted
themselves that they had people that were supporters.
In fact, there's a recent UN report saying that the Israeli claims were fabricated. It's not a black and white question at all, Ian.
No, but if UNRWA themselves issued statements saying, this is very unfortunate...
They suspended a few people, the ones who were named, not on the basis that they knew they'd done this, but on the basis that they were under suspicion. That's what they did. And it was a tiny number. And Cameron's decision to suspend, even if that was all true, Cameron's decision to pause British funding to UNRWA was deeply reckless and irresponsible. Before they'd even interrogated, Britain had even looked and seen whether the claims were true or not. And recently the UN has said they're baseless. That was the three things.
But Israel has always been a major ally of Britain, so you would expect the British government, whether it's Labour or Conservative, over the years and indeed up to the present day, to probably believe Israel over anybody else. I don't think that's very surprising, is it?
Look, you're the biographer of Maggie Thatcher, and you will recall what Maggie Thatcher did when Israel committed atrocities. She was a great friend of Israel, as you know. She was great enemy of anti-Semitism, as you know. But when Sabra Shatila happened, Israel's complicity in the slaughter, in the terrible slaughter in those refugee camps, that actually went ballistic. He said it's barbarism. We suspended, I think from memory, we suspended arms to Israel at that stage. They did so the previous year when Israel launched a freelance attack on an Iraqi nuclear reactor. She went bonkers, and I unearthed this wonderful interview between a Jewish Chronicle reporter called Monty Modlin, I think he was, and he went to see Thatcher and he said, "You're betraying your great friend Israel." Why? And she gave him a Thatcher lecture. You probably remember this. She said that we obey international law. Without international law, we are nothing. We have nothing. And that is the lesson which not just Sunak and the Tories
I think she
have forgotten.
said something very similar at the outbreak of the Iraq War in 2003.
Yeah,
very much so.
Yeah.
But she held that view very strongly.
Yeah.
My focus isn't that in the main body of the book. In the main body of the book, my focus is to. It really seeks, I suppose, the whole thing with the benefit of hindsight, seeks to demonstrate. If you look at the horror, which I regard as a terrorist crime of October the 7th, the mass slaughter, is an outrageous, terrible thing, but it didn't come from nowhere. It has a long history. Terrible things were going on, terrible killings on either side. So the story of it and the odd moments when there appeared to be a breakthrough. You know, in 1993-5, when there were the Oslo Accords, some people say they were a complete waste of time. At Oslo, or not at Oslo, but as a consequence of Oslo, Yasser Arafat, the leader of the PLO, agreed to recognise Israel and would forswear violence, which since then he and what became the Palestinian Authority have forsworn violence. At the same time, Rabin, the Prime Minister, said that he recognised that Arafat was a legitimate leader of the Palestinian people, and the way began to get open towards the creation of a two-state solution, which my view happens to be is the only outcome. It looks in the distant future. What happened to Rabin? Soon afterwards, in the summer, there was a demonstration against it by extreme Israelis on the right. Likud was in the lead of the demonstration, which is the party Netanyahu led then and still leads. And they had a coffin in the middle of this demonstration, and there was a noose above the coffin, and the crowd, the demonstrators, were chanting, "Death to Rabin, death to Rabin." Later that year, a zealot took it into his head. God had allegedly spoken to him or some such, and he assassinated Rabin and ruined that prospect. Although,
have I got the wrong time here? But Bill Clinton says it was Arafat that ruined it because he had agreed to everything.
Bill Clinton's claims that Camp David you're talking about.
That was later.
That
went on with his successor, Ehud Barak, who happens to be now a very fierce critic of Netanyahu and what's being done in Gaza, as indeed today the most. And I believe I came to this. My father was the man who revealed Belsen to the world. If anyone accuses me of anti-Semitism, they can go and get lost, so far as I'm concerned. But I spent quite a lot of time in my life speaking at key Jewish events here about Belsen, about my father's words at Belsen. We must never let this happen again. The same people who are Jewish and Israeli, who endured, or are the offspring of those who endured the Holocaust, are the same people, if they're academic historians of the Holocaust, some very fine historians, say they came out much before it arose, as we're saying, what is being it pains us to say it, and they've written about it very extensively. We have to draw the conclusion as historians that what is being perpetrated here is genocide. Now, the Genocide Convention was established at the end of the Second World War as a consequence of the horrors perpetrated
well, let's
in
talk
war.
about that again in a bit more, because I suspect, Peter, you've got some views on the British government's attitude to the genocide claims. In just a moment, we do have to go to a break, unfortunately. It's 20 past 8.
LBC. Our Pets in a Pickle. We're here when it matters most. For fuss-free pet insurance policies as unique as they are. Visit petsinnapickle.co.uk.
From Alan Bennett and Nicholas Heidner comes The Choral, when they were divided by war.
Carted off to France. Haven't lived.
So sing. He united them in song. Starring Ray Fiennes.
A man should hear a little music for the sense of the beautiful in the human soul.
The Choral, in cinemas now.
On a windswept walk in Carmarthen, while someone tries to use your card details to hire a speedboat in Cannes. This is the moment you relax, knowing that Barclays Advanced Tech has helped to spot the fraud in under a second, and their expert team are on hand to close it down. So you can get back to being windswept. Oh, just one of the ways we're protecting our customers 24/7. Search Barclays Fraud Protection. Barclays. Make money work for you.
Waitrose presents
I really fancy a mince pie.
one man's selfless journey from sofa to kitchen.
I'm getting up.
For a #1 golden mince pie with juicy golden raisins, cherries and apricots, and zesty limoncello.
With some cream.
For a #1 golden mince pie with juicy golden raisins, cherries and apricots, zesty limoncello, and a dollop of fresh cream.
Limoncello.
Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Selected stores subject to availability.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
22 minutes past 8. Peter Oborne and Jonathan Dimbleby here. They're talking about their various books. Complicit, Britain's Role in the Destruction of Gaza by Peter Oborne. That's this book, if you're watching. And Jonathan Dimbleby, The Palestinians, photographs by Don McCullin. Somebody is accusing me of total ignorance by not having heard of Don. So he's a national treasure, apparently, but I can't know every national treasure. I've got one in front of me. Maybe two in front of me.
I'd say one with Jonathan.
Let's get back to the subject.
Let's get back to let's do that. Now, Peter, we were talking about the allegations of genocide there. Now, the British government's position is that there is no genocide.
That's so.
What do you say about that in the book?
Well, I actually have in the book, I have a long list of authorities, as you say, many of them Israeli, some of them leading up. Here it is. There's a long, long list. Craig Monica from the UN, Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Commission blog, masses of them. Avi Schleim, Emeritus Professor of International Relations, Martin Short, masses of them. I have the list of the very distinguished British people who say the opposite. There isn't a genocide.
Yeah, I think isn't it true that it is? But there's a difference between saying there isn't a genocide, and we can't say that there is a genocide, because if you are a government, you have to wait until the International Criminal Court has made that clear. You can say, if you're government, you can say you are in danger of, evidence is very disturbing because there is an international, but what you can't actually state is that I happen to think that we took a long time to say some of the very tough things that David Lammy, for instance, when he became Foreign Secretary, started to say. And it's interesting because it's the number of number of really significant Jews in this country, leading Jews, Lord Neuberger, former Supreme Court judge, and others.
Ilan Pape, Avi Schleim, and they're all,
he hasn't said that, but they extreme anxiety about what is happening inside Israel. The minority in it, and it is true that the majority of Israelis, according to the polls, they want the war to end, but they are not unhappy about the occupation of the West Bank, and they're not unhappy about. They don't seem to express much anxiety about the problem of Gaza. I think that what's happening here, insofar as there isn't much, is I think we have a terrible history of responsibility and the great shame as Europeans for the Holocaust, because we are collusive in that. Even though we fought against the Nazis, we failed the Jews. First of all,
in Britain, we have a noxious history of anti-Semitism going way into the Middle Ages and expelling the Jews.
So do most European countries.
Most European countries. It's a total history, and it's a great shame. And the other thing is, I think that a number of Jews here, and I've spoken to them, they feel. They share the view that they are very disturbed and don't like and think it's wrong what's happening in Gaza, but they don't want to say it too loudly because they sense that Israeli Jews feel they're having an existential struggle and they don't want to undermine
But just on the subject of genocide, there have been, well, the figures vary, but let's say 60, 70,000 people have been killed in Gaza over the period. Now, I would have thought most people listening to this would think, well, hang on a minute, there are 1.5, 2 million people in Gaza. If the Israelis were committing systematic genocide, they would have surely tried to kill all of them.
Can I go into these figures? By the way, it's not just that the British government won't use the genocide term. No British minister has ever said that Israel is even committing war crimes. I mean, that is how... It's quite extraordinary. And I think... But anyway...
60 incidents...
Going to 60,000 figure... Imagine this was London, right, which was under attack, and there's 10 million people in London, say, and as a percentage, 60,000 is about 3%, and it's probably, the Economist thinks it's more like 100,000, 5%. 3% of Londoners is 300,000 people. Imagine, and that is what the proportion is in London, 300,000. And then you've got the 500,000 who are maimed, injured, all the ones who are missing, nobody wears out. You've got every mosque in London smashed, the churches hit, the public buildings all destroyed, London University gone, etc., etc. I think there is a danger in not seeing this from a Palestinian point of view and understanding the immeasurable and unspeakable horror that the Palestinians have been going through.
I would say, can I say something connected to that? Because you implied that a genocide is the elimination of a whole people.
And it often is.
The genocide under international law, which is what I'm talking about, does not involve the elimination of a whole lot of people. It is the conditions that you impose on those people, preventing them having food, civilians being killed in large numbers. The criteria, then that's what makes the Israeli Jews that I referred to, who are academics, say there is a genocide there. It isn't the total elimination. It is to make their lives impossible.
But do you not think, I mean, look, I'm not going to argue with you about the legal definitions, but I think for most people listening to this, they'll think of the Rwandan genocide, which was, I mean, nobody would argue about whether that was a genocide or not. You think of the Armenian genocide, the risk of upsetting people on that. But you see, if you go too far down this road, you could say that, well, the bombing of Dresden at the end of the Second World War, you could say that was us committing a genocide of a type.
Yes, I think as a case it might have been, actually. What we did in Dresden was absolutely terrible. I think this is a discussion, I mean, for experts. And the point I'm simply making, the experts who Jonathan has spoken to, the ones I've spoken to, their view, generally speaking, genocide experts and the top human rights organisations basically have concluded, and their knowledge and understanding is much greater than any of ours, I think, is that they're genocide. And it's a very, very serious and terrible thing.
There's an American statistic which is interesting and I think important, given the American support for Israel. 61%, according to one recent poll, and I think it's a trustworthy poll, it's a street cred poll, as it were, 61% of American Jews believe that Israel has committed war crimes in Gaza, and 39% of them believe that Israel has committed genocide in Gaza. That's American Jews, which is quite an astonishing figure. And it is only a poll, right?
Well, some breaking news. That's what we do on LBC. The BBC has apologised to Donald Trump over the Panorama documentary. It calls it an error of judgment. Well, I think we can probably all agree it was certainly that. We'll get the reaction from both of our guests, who I'm sure have a view on that after the LBC News at 8:30 with Darryl Jackson.
An independent reviews found the murder of a 10-year-old girl was preventable and she'd been failed multiple times by the safeguarding system. Sarah Sharif died at the hands of her abusive father and stepmother in Woking in 2023. The government's scrapping police and crime commissioners across England and Wales. It's hoped the move will put more investment into neighbourhood policing on the streets. And Sir Keir Starmer says he'll deal with whoever it was that briefed journalists against his health secretary. The Prime Minister's apologised to Wes Streeting over rumours he was plotting a leadership challenge. LBC weather, rain in southern and central areas tonight, clear elsewhere but becoming colder, a low in Scotland of -2 degrees.
LBC.
Things are really heating up in the country's smallest house. Dad! Squealed Mia Mouse. We could save around £100 by setting the boiler flow temperature to 60 degrees.
And turning radiators down in rooms we don't use.
Interrupted Mo. Yes, Mo. Turn them down, not off, said Mia.
Plus finding and blocking drafts,
said Mo. Should save enough to increase our allowance? A little saves a lot. You could save around £100 a year off your energy bills with 3 tips at gov.uk/clean energy.
Chase is the digital bank you can count on.
How so?
Because you get 1% cash back on your grocery shop.
Like on prosciutto?
Yeah, prosciutto.
And seaweed crackers?
Sure, those two.
Hang on, what about rotisserie chickens?
If it's in your grocery shop, Chase has got your cash back. Join today and get 1% cash back on debit card spending on groceries, fuel and everyday transport. Chase. See what your money can do. 18 plus UK residents. Eligibility applies. 1% cash back for your first year. Maximum £15 per month. Exceptions apply.
At Laithwaite's, we go to great lengths to bring you great wine. We go far and wide. Searching high, and we mean really high. And low, and we mean stored deep underground in a cave low. Off the shelf? We don't go there. Off the beaten track, we certainly go there. And the best bit is, we even come to you. Order now at laithwaites.co.uk. Laithwaites. We stop at nothing to bring you great wine.
Iain Dale on LBC.
8:32 on LBC. Peter Oborne and Jonathan Dimbleby with me. That news again. The BBC has apologised to Donald Trump over the editing of his speech on January the 6th, 2021, which appeared on a Panorama documentary in 2024, calling it an error of judgment and saying it will not be broadcast again in this form on any BBC platforms. There are also claims this evening that the BBC's Newsnight programme also doctored footage of a Trump speech. The corporation says it is looking into those claims. And by complete coincidence, I happen to be on Newsnight tonight, so goodness knows what is going to happen then, whether they talk about it or not. Jonathan, this is a dark week for the BBC in many ways. Do you think they were right to issue an apology?
Yes. I think if they hadn't, it would have run and run longer. It may still run. It may not go away. Trump is so mercurial. Leave aside court case that probably will run into the mud if it became a court case. I think for me, the really worrying thing is that the BBC is doing its level best and always does to be an impartial organisation. It puts out tens of thousands of hours of programme a year in the area of news, current affairs, across radio, television, documentaries, and it gets things wrong. And this was signally wrong. I mean, I spent a lot of my life doing documentaries and current affairs reports, etc. I like to think that I would not have made that error, and that if I had done, an editor would have said to me, hang about, Jonathan, you need at least the equivalent of ... in the written piece when you're not taking a whole quote. And it wasn't there, and it was an error, and it should have been, in my view, BBC went through due diligence, which means they're dealing with these things much slower than it should be. There should have been a very swift, once this emerged this time, a very swift statement. That was bad judgment.
Peter?
I've read 3 pieces of analysis today of what happened, and I really recommend them if anybody wants to have a serious understanding. One is Lewis Goodall, who was a BBC correspondent, a former insider's perspective, and one is David Aronovich in The Observer. I thought he wrote a really very valuable piece, and Alan Rusbridger in Prospect. You read those 3, but of course it was a very bad mistake, but the BBC produces a massive output, and the thing I would like to say is Britain created 2 great institutions in the 20th century. We created the National Health Service and the BBC. Both of those, in different ways, are under massive attack from billionaire oligarchs in the United States. The idea, I'm glad that President Trump is taking an interest in truth, and the same applies to Boris Johnson. I'm glad he's at last taking an interest. Both of them are...
And in this case, incidentally, so too are Putin and Netanyahu are both attacking the BBC on the grounds of this programme. We can't be all that bad if I win the BBC.
It's not just that programme, though, is it? I mean, when you look at...
read that Prescott letter. That Prescott letter is basically a piece of political agitprop. I've read it very carefully, and Aronovich exposes this extremely well. It's a partisan piece written from a right-wing perspective. It doesn't... a bit on stuff... His analysis of the BBC English coverage of Gaza is a mess. He simply puts Israeli complaints. He doesn't show the...
Yeah, but when you look at the BBC Arabic coverage, I mean, you look at some of the examples...
Yeah, but again, Aronovich got the point here. It's very interesting. He says that Prescott misrepresented that situation, that yes, there was a problem. It had been presented to the senior chaps and ladies, and they put in motion measures to correct it. And so his idea that it hadn't been dealt with was not true. That is why you have to dig down deeply. The danger of this is there's bits of pieces of information get spread around, and they're false. And I'm afraid that Prescott is that long letter which the Telegraph, no friend of the BBC, made a huge amount of. That letter is a mess. I'm writing about it. I'm researching it. I'm afraid Michael Prescott, my former colleague in the British lobby about 25 years ago, very nice man. I liked him as a colleague, but it's a shambles, his letter.
I do think we have to remember in this is to try and get a bit of perspective. As a result of this, a very good Director General who was handling rather well the very difficult period coming up to the Charter Review and how to fund the BBC, and the head of news go. A bit of perspective now would be, as they say, welcome, because it is very easy for some of the enemies in the press, and enemies is a strong word, people who would actually like to bring the BBC low.
I've often wondered who these people are, because I've never met one.
Well, I have.
Who?
I have. I'm not going to name names any more than you name names when we have private conversations.
Well, the Observer quotes Robbie Gibbs saying he wants, who's on the board, I think, saying he would explode the BBC. That's a quote of the Observer, not saying he actually said. There's lots of people. Boris Johnson said this. I mean, hang on, the circles you mix in, a lot of them, these right-wing Tories hate the BBC.
Just to be as calm as one can be about this, there are a lot of press, newspapers, if you like, the Mail, the Telegraph, the Times. Hold on a second. But a lot of people don't know this. You know this. Are in fierce and growing competition with organisations like the BBC, loss of advertising. They want to see public institutions like that diminished, if not exhausted. Yes. And then there are ideological adversaries in the right of the political spectrum who actually, like the Reform leader, who'd want to replace the BBC. They don't want a BBC.
Well,
at least that's what they said.
On Monday he didn't say that at all. In fact, he said completely the opposite. He said that he actually valued the BBC and he doesn't want to see it destroyed.
He plays multiple tunes, rather like
many
others.
Politicians do. But I just take you back to the year 2002 when Labour supporting Greg Dyke was Director General. Gordon Brown's best friend Gavin Davies was chairman of the BBC. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the Mail and the Telegraph were outraged by that, but that was always considered quite acceptable, and I think it's hilarious.
No, it wasn't. I remember writing pieces criticising that.
I think it's hilarious that Robbie Gibb, who actually was a BBC journalist for more than 20 years, I'm sure you worked with him at times, Jonathan.
No, I never have. I haven't met him.
He worked on Newsnight. I think he was deputy editor. He seems to be the sort of the one that Alistair Campbell and the newsagents.
I tell you what, are you defending Robbie Gibb?
Well,
I'm not going to put it. Go away and read Alan Rossbridger's piece. Alan Rossbridger is good, and I think I think we should, because we got the opportunity to go back to talking about Palestine.
Well, I think we should, because we've got lots of calls coming in. Because if you hadn't said that, I was about to do it. Alan is in Reigate. Alan, hi, what would you like to say?
Good evening, Ian and gentlemen. It's been lovely listening to you all explaining things. It really has been very insightful.
Thank you. What would you like to ask?
My question is quite simple. Under Gaza is a huge reserve of fossil fuels, gas and oil. Not only that, No, yes, that's fact. Messrs. Trump.
I'm not sure it is.
Well, I think you should read about it, but never mind. Messrs. Trump, Wickoff, and Kushner want Gaza flattened so that they can build on it. Those are the drivers behind what has been going on for decades in Gaza and in Palestine. And that's bad, that is, because what the Hamas did in October was awful. They should never have done it, but that's what happened. But those facts I've just given you are very interesting as to regards what will happen in the future.
Well, let me ask our guests, are there oil reserves under Gaza?
I think there are some oil and gas reserves in the sea, the Mediterranean, sort of offshore. I think so. I'm not an expert on this. And I don't think our caller is right to say that I'm not a fan of Trump and still less of Kushner, but I don't think this is what they're up to.
I agree with that. I don't know about the oil, and I don't think what they're up to. They decided they want to end it. I don't think they'll succeed. Incidentally, I think that it's the ceasefire is just about holding a sort of ceasefire.
By the way, can I say something about the ceasefire? Israel has killed about 250 Palestinians, and every time there's a new slaughter of a family, the ceasefire was tested, we read. If Hamas had killed 250 Israelis, we would not be talking about a ceasefire. We would be talking about the ceasefire having been broken by Hamas. This is an example of the double standard.
I think that's why I say it's sort of holding. That's to say, it isn't full-out war. There's been a sort of part of the IDF has retreated from part of about 50% of Gaza, but they're on there. So you've effectively got two states inside Gaza now. And how it ever gets to the next stage, I do not know.
Alan, it seems that you're wrong. Look, I'm only going on ChatGPT here, so that could be wrong as well. But it says, what is known, there is a small offshore natural gas field called the Gaza Marine Gas Field, discovered around 2000 off the coast of Gaza. There are no known confirmed oil reserves under Gaza or in its immediate offshore area that have been proved or are being commercially exploited. Well,
and can I just say something? Before the leader of the Reform Party charges me with defamation and takes me to court, if that is not his view that I expressed or suggested he held, I withdraw it completely and fully apologise.
Well done.
Oh dear, we're all cowed now, aren't we? Alan, thank you. Let's go to Paul, who's in Twickenham. Hello, Paul.
Good evening, Ian. My question to the panel is, there was a documentary, an hour and a quarter, broadcast on the television on Monday evening called Breaking Ranks, and it featured, 10 or 12 Israeli IDF people, and some spoke anonymously, but they all gave their name, title, rank. And the gist of it was, all of them said their consciences had been seared. They didn't know how they were going to live with themselves in the future because of what they had permitted themselves to be ordered to do and what they had witnessed in terms of IDF, as they worded it, atrocities. On the matter of genocide, one of the people who spoke, not anonymously, but face-to-face to camera with his name, rank and serial number, said what it certainly was a revenge mission, and that had been made clear by all the company commanders to these IDF soldiers. What they were on was a revenge mission. They were not picking out Hamas and distinguishing them from Palestinian civilians. I found it absolutely gripping, and I wondered whether it seems to have sunk without trace, hasn't been commented on. And I was wondering, as I watched this compelling and human documentary, whether people would be alleging it was a put-up job or criticising it in the way that they criticised the Gaza business with the boy being the son of an official of Hamas. Obviously, anyone who is in charge of the agriculture ministry is bound to be appointed by Hamas. That's inevitable. And just a quick sort of second question, if I may, gentlemen, on the question of genocide, what keeps coming into my mind is what is the question of timing. It was estimated at the start of by the wretched Nazis during the Second World War that there were 11 million Jews in Europe, and they were setting about extinguishing them all. They only got to 6 million. So in answer to Ian's point about do you have to get rid of everybody before it's a genocide, obviously the answer is no. And I would apply the same wretched criteria to Gaza. What would have happened if this current ceasefire, tremulous as it is, had not come about? What are the number of... I've made my points, gentlemen.
OK, thank you very much, Paul. Peter?
Well, the Holocaust, the Nazis, as the caller said, would have killed every single Jew. And they killed 6 million in industrial conditions. And I don't think that we need to... I think comparisons and so on are completely wrong. This was a unique and terrible, and which is in all of our consciences all the time. On the matter of the film... it's very interesting, this. It was a very good film on ITV, and it showed, and as the caller said, it showed the traumas and the IDF soldiers who were worried about and coming to terms with what they've done. Much of this stuff has been covered before. Breaking the Silence is the extremely distinguished Israeli organisation where former soldiers talk about what they've done and what they've gone through. But I think one of the key, really interesting points is, as the caller again said, was that not a single newspaper noticed that. He noticed it was sunk without trace. And this is a problem with the mainstream media in our country, that this very powerful film, showing with this kind of raw testimony, totally ignored, apart from I think The Guardian when it set it up, but once it appeared, our media ignored that film.
Well, I knew about it. I didn't watch it, but I couldn't because I was on air.
It was not a single review of it.
Well, I did read about it somewhere.
Yes, I told you The Guardian did mention it in advance. Yeah.
I think I didn't see the film, but what is certainly true is that Peter mentioned it. There are large numbers of soldiers and leading commanders who have said we should not be doing this. This is and identify it as either done because Netanyahu's trying to save himself over other issues of being charged with fraud, incidentally. Or how on earth did October the 7th happen? I think it's important, at least it's important for me personally to say, I am not critical of the existence, I don't know Peter is, of the State of Israel. I believe in the State of Israel should have an existence behind the borders of 1967, and that which means that they adhere to some version, which it got very near to in 2000, incidentally, which you touched on, of an Israeli state behind the 6-7 borders, Resolution 242, which is a British resolution approved by the United States. And we have to, if there's going to be any peace there, get back to something like that. So we can identify... What I don't think we should do is to say that because we are severely critical of what is happening in Gaza on the basis of the evidence, because, as I try to make clear in the book, there's a long history of this, to go from there to saying there shouldn't be an Israeli state or that there should be no Palestinians is crazy. That way it would be a nightmare of the kind that Peter eloquently referred to in the case of the Jewish Holocaust in Europe.
Right, we'll take more of your calls in just a few moments' time. It's coming up to 10 to 9.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
The latest disclosures from the Epstein emails and the dotted line that links him ever more closely to Donald Trump.
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app.
A message from TfL.
I saw him in the local news a few days after. His name's Rakesh. They had to put him into a coma just because I didn't look again at that turning. He had 2 kids. How did I not see his bike ahead of me? Well, I didn't look again. He didn't make it.
Drivers, take another look, not a life. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
creatives. It's time to get prepped for the art and design industry. And where better than Global Academy? Here's Keo, an art and design student in Year 12.
As an art student, we get the chance to work on our own pieces, either in the studio or using the digital software. Some of my work has also been shown in galleries, and last week I got the chance to attend a design agency to learn more about my future career.
Global Academy. Apply now and join us in Years 10 or 12. globalacademy.com.
Hillary's best ever Black Friday sale is now on, and it doesn't get any better than this, with an extra 10% off absolutely everything. That's on top of up to 50% off hundreds of made-to-measure blinds, curtains and shutters. Plus, control your blinds from anywhere with a half-price smart hub when you buy any electric blind, with measuring and fitting always included. And word to the window wise. Order now for blinds and curtains fitted in time for Christmas. Book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. Conditions apply.
This Saturday, the £15 million lotto jackpot must be won.
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 Yes, the lotto jackpot must be won this Saturday. What are you waiting for? Get your ticket today. Lotto from the National Lottery. It could be you. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
8:51. Abby says, Iain, I'm not surprised you didn't watch that film, seeing that you have been one of the most useful idiots for Zionist Israel. Thank you, Abby. Always a pleasure to hear from you. Peter Oborne is here. This is his book, Complicit, Britain's Role in the Destruction of Gaza. Jonathan Dimbleby's book is called The Palestinians. Right, let's go to another call. Dan is a new caller in Barnet. Hi, Dan.
Hi there. Just a very quick one. I turned on the radio around 15 minutes ago and heard your speaker mention that there's meant to be a ceasefire. But Israel has since killed 250 or so Palestinians. Just for the sake of the wider audience, was there a particular reason you failed to mention that as part of the ceasefire deal, all the hostages were also meant to have been returned by now?
Peter?
I was talking about the breaches to the ceasefire deal.
Well, that is a breach of the ceasefire, isn't it?
I mean, the hostage process is going on. I mean, it's we know.
But they were supposed to all be released within 48 hours.
The live hostages were, and they all have been. The question was over those.
That's incorrect. They were all meant to have been released.
Actually, there were. It was identified that they couldn't do them all at the same time. It was recognised, and the Americans have since recognised that because have acknowledged that because they don't quite know where the bodies are, difficult to find.
I don't think that's correct. Well, I think you need to check your facts.
Well, I expect we both do. It's always
because
useful.
they've been drip feeding hostages back since then, and the actual deal was that they would all be released.
But let us say you're right. And
I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the wider audience because I don't know if it was intentional that you missed it out, but
it wasn't me who said it. It was my colleague here. But what I would say is that the fact that they failed to get the hostages back, all of them, certainly in the eyes of the international community, is not good enough grounds for saying we're going to go on attacking those Palestinians who come across into our line, civilian Palestinians, which is what's been happening.
OK, let's move on. Dan, thank you for that. Let's go to Samina, who is in Tooting. Samina, hi.
Hi, Iain, and hello to the panel, and particularly Peter Oborne for shining a light on Gaza in the last 2 years. Your journalism has been amazing.
Thank you.
And that line is a yellow line without any indications. It's just poles up. Yellow poles, apparently. So my question was regarding IDF reservists who are British citizens, and they're returning obviously to the UK to their normal jobs. And what's the position, firstly, of them fighting for another foreign army? And secondly, this is obviously your view, what about these alleged war crimes that some of them have been accused of? There's been many videos on social media, people returning to university jobs, teaching assistants, sorts of jobs, and I personally feel slightly uncomfortable with people, British citizens, being accused of war crimes in another country. And I just thought, what is the panel's view on that?
there's two separate questions you're raising. One is the issue of British citizens going to fight for a foreign army. Now, that I think that we are permitted to do that. We can go and fight in the American army, or I suppose even the Chinese army. Are they not an enemy? I don't know whether. But so no, I think it's an issue whether British citizens should be able to do that. I think it's open to discussion.
Surely, though, generally, if they're going to fight for the IDF, they would be dual citizens.
I don't know, but I don't think that was the case. Rather than otherwise, they're in danger of being seen as mercenaries, aren't they? And that puts them in a different category. So I imagine that they are. But I don't.
The second issue, which is raised by the caller, is if they committed war crimes. Now, this applies not specifically to British citizens who go to fight. I do think it is a general point about soldiers in the IDF who have committed war crimes, just as the leaders of Israel, Netanyahu is a fugitive from justice, actually, as we speak, on alleged war crimes.
Although may well be pardoned.
Well, but so should anybody who fights in a war. British soldiers who commit war crimes in Afghanistan or Iraq, they're prosecuted. Think of Northern Ireland. I support that. I think that anybody who commits a war crime should be prosecuted. It's essential if international law has been maintained. So I completely agree with the caller that I
think if you're an individual soldier, for instance, I mean, with Northern Ireland, there have been, as you say, with Afghanistan, individual soldiers. In this case, on the basis that people are innocent until they've been proved guilty, you can't deny them, which is what was, I don't think necessarily the caller was asking. She said what made her feel uncomfortable. I don't think that you could prevent them coming back to jobs.
No, you can't do that
at all, and shouldn't be prevented from coming. But if they were then found at some point to have been individually complicit in a war crime, then that would be a different matter.
Yeah, but that's true of anybody who...
Exactly.
But I do think it's a relatively question. People coming back may be traumatised, damaged by what they've gone through. I think they will need... some help, very possibly.
OK, Samina, thank you very much. Look, we haven't got much time left, but I do want to squeeze in this question in from Dave in Manchester. Dave, could you be as brief as possible?
Sure. Jonathan said at the start that he was inspired to write his book by Golda Meir's statement in 1979, there's no such thing as the Palestinian Arabs. But...
69.
It was 69.
It was 69, she said it, yeah.
Well, in which case then the question stands even more strongly that the PLO was formed in 1964 when Israel didn't occupy the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And in fact, during that period between 1948 and 1967, there was no attempt by Egypt and Jordan, which did occupy them, to go and create an independent Palestinian state or recognise the Palestinian people there.
You raise a huge issue, and it's a very important issue.
30 seconds.
The relationship between the PLO and the Jordanians was absolutely terrible. The Jordanians were attacking the Palestinians, as did the Syrians. It was a very complex situation. Read the Palestinian book and you will discover that. And you're quite right to make the point, incidentally.
Right, well, we do have to finish it there. We could go on for the next hour, but I guess we better stop there. Jonathan's book is called The Palestinians. If you're watching, I'm brandishing it in front of the camera. Profits from this book to be donated to UNICEF, photographs by Don McCullin. And Peter's book is called Complicit, Britain's Role in the Destruction of Gaza by Peter Oborne. Shan says on a text, it's a real pleasure to listen to Messrs Dimbleby, Oborne and Dale, all three of whom... wait for this, are calm, respectful and erudite. Well, that goes for two of the three of us. And I mean you two, not me.
Listen, I think you should leave it to the listeners to decide.
I think so. Thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed the hour. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Now, I approach the next hour with some degree of trepidation. You'll see why in a moment. Swear words that were once potent are losing their sting, a new study has revealed. Among Gen Z, racist, sexist, homophobic and ableist slurs are now ranked as the most offensive terms in the English language. At the same time, old-fashioned profanity based on sex, religion and bodily fluids barely raise an eyebrow. Is that true? Do we all not really care about swear words anymore? Do we use them less than we used to? I really don't want you to use any over the next hour because I will have to press the red button that is to my left. So please respect that. But do you swear less than you used to, and are you offended less than you used to be?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, a report into the death of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif says she was failed in multiple ways by the safeguarding system. She was murdered by her father and stepmother at her home in